It's Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to my next guest here, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, please give a like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. I have Eeerie Von Frankenfurter, one of probably the greatest names that we've had here on this podcast so far, probably number one. He's from the Monsters from Outer Space from Charleston, South Carolina. How are you doing, Eerie?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
So before I ask anything else, I have to ask, how'd you come up with the name?
So that's actually kind of a mixture of two of my, horror punk favorites. Eerie Von was definitely one of my favorite Misfits bassists. And also, I kind of had to come up with a first name to be on Facebook because they don't accept Doctor as a Facebook first name. So, and the Frankfurter part was after my favorite character from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I love that.
Classic movie. I just still can't believe that they're still playing those shows out, and they're still selling them out to midnight showings everywhere. That's one of those movies that's never going to die. But how did you get started kind of in music? What was your inspiration? Did you ever have like a moment where you heard a certain song and then you're like, oh my God, I got to get into music? And how'd that all work for you?
For me, I kind of started off with The Doors, honestly. I was a really huge fan of Jim Morrison, and I love The Doors and their music. And I always kind of felt like I had more of a, kind of that type of voice. So that's kind of like I drew up on a lot of similarities between, the two of us. So. And I actually was in a band in high school for a little bit, and that's pretty much all we did was Doors covers, and that's kind of what really, led me.
What's your favorite Doors song?
Oh man, Riders on the Storm, man.
Yeah,
I don't care
that's
how
a
many
classic.
times I hear that one. Don't care how many times.
Oh yeah. It's just they're one of those bands where they, as famous as they were and are, they aren't nearly talked about as much as they should be. They're kind of one of those bands where like everyone's heard about them, everyone knows their music, but they don't talk about them as much, and that's just a shame because I think it might have been because they weren't around for as long as most other bands. They were only around for a few years before Morrison died, but they are by far probably in the top 10 for most influential bands of all time. There's no doubt about that. So how did this band get formed? How did you come up with the Monsters from Outer Space?
Well, basically, it through Craigslist, believe it or not. I ended up coming back from a Misfits reunion show a couple of years ago and realized that there wasn't really a whole lot of horror punk bands that, were in the Charleston area. And, decided to kind of take it upon myself to start looking for some musicians because I've always wanted to be in a band. This is actually the first serious band that I've ever been in, so I'm kind of especially excited about that.
Believe it or not, that is the fourth time on this show. You are the 29th band or musician that we've had on. That is the fourth time we've had a Craigslist. Someone said that they formed their band on Craigslist. The first person that said that, I was like, what, you weren't afraid you were going to get murdered or anything like that? You're like, no. And I was like, apparently that's how a lot of people are forming their bands nowadays. I was not aware of that. But, yeah.
I've always had really good experiences with it, so I'm not turning it down from now on.
That's what I heard because, well, this is going to be a little tangent, but it needs to be said because I was going to say if there was another Craigslist, I'd tell it. But I used to work at Sam's Club when I was really, really young, when I was about like 19 years old. And there was a Craigslist deal gone wrong in our parking lot, and a guy got shot. So then I was like, yeah, that's Craigslist or whatever, or the dude that wanted to just steal the thing as opposed to paying the guy for it. So I've always had a thing with Craigslist. So I was like, no, never do it. But apparently, it helps out a lot of people. So everyone, I would say Craigslist is a way that you can form a band, but I would like to remind everyone to just be careful when you're doing Craigslist because you never know who you can run into, but it is a way that you can form a band. So when you guys were forming your band, did you guys all kind of had like the same genre in mind of music that you were going to play, or did you guys kind of have like a discussion when you guys were first forming?
Oh, absolutely, man. We basically we're all on the same page about the horror punk category, and I like right as soon as I had met our guitarist. It was actually just two of us for a little while, and we were looking for a drummer and possibly one other, and the two of us actually got together maybe a couple weekends a month or whatever, and I would always come up with, like a bunch of different songs, and we'd try and hash them out together. And then our other guitarist actually came along a little later, and he, grew up listening to bands like AC/DC and, the Misfits, of course, and stuff like that. So he kind of has, and Motorhead, I should probably add that one in there as well. He's got a, kind of like a nice balance of all those, and he fits in really well with our kind of, thrashier, heavier type of metal punk almost.
Even though the Doors were not even close to horror punk, do you still does their influence still come to you guys when it comes to lyrically or musically? Because I know since you also played in kind of like a Doors cover band, do you take any of that from that band and from that experience to kind of bring onto to the current band?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I just sat and, looked at Jim Morrison's lyrics and came up with poetry and, turned that, into songs years later. A huge influence even still. And like I said, I still listen to the Doors all the time, and I love them.
So what aspects of the horror punk genre really appealed to you when you were kind of trying to find a genre that you really enjoyed playing in?
To tell you the truth, I really enjoy songs with, the people are talking about blood and guts and, murdering and killing and stuff like that. And, but I love the fact that they all manage to make them sound so happy all the time. I really love that for some reason. And you would never be able to tell that it was about all that stuff unless you actually looked at the lyrics sometimes. So
I personally really love those songs where, they have maybe such a happy or upbeat beat, and if you're just listening to that and all of a sudden you're listening to lyrics, you're like, holy shit, this is about the complete opposite. Those songs are really hidden gems, and I love those. And if you were to categorize the horror punk genre into one song, is there one song that you think really defines that genre?
Oh man, there's so many good ones. It would definitely have to be, for me personally, I would say probably Mephisto Waltz by the Misfits, of course, or, man, that's a tough one.
Are the Misfits the band that kind of started out the genre, or are they just the biggest band in the genre?
To tell you the truth, I feel like they're the biggest band in the genre, but they were the second band, from what I know of, to kind of start out the genre. The first one was a band called The Damned, which was around back in the late 70s. And they kind of had, that initial horror punk type feel, but then the Misfits, of course, came along not too short and long after that. And, they've definitely been the biggest name for sure.
I was going to say, as soon as you said horror punk, I know he doesn't really play punk, but obviously just having horror in it, I was automatically thinking of Alice Cooper or something, just because of the theatrics that he did back in the day. We're kind of the same stuff now. He was one of the original pioneers too, but because even when I saw you dress up, I was like, oh my god, that's almost like Alice Cooper or whatever. And then I was like, so I have to ask though first, how did you get those prod things? Did you just get them at a costume shop, or how those come into place?
They're actually they're $4, and you can buy them at Spirit Halloween. I'm not trying to plug Spirit Halloween right now, but you can. You can get them. Like I said, I think they're $7. I usually get 2 pairs of them in case I break them, because they break all the time. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Yeah. But it's $7 with shipping.
So we saw on your Facebook page, sometimes you like to paint your face different colors. On your Facebook page, you're all white, kind of like a skeleton. Do you change your look for every show, or do you just change it whenever you feel like it?
It's pretty much whenever I feel like it. Really, it doesn't really. I really don't have any rhyme or reason to it. Really, I try to go with the same type of look, but sometimes I like to change the hair up a little bit.
Is there a signature look that you think best defines you?
Probably the mohawk, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably the mohawk, yeah, absolutely. Especially with the the white paint and everything like that. So.
Yeah. I was always going to ask, how difficult is it to walk around and just do other things when you have a mohawk, like getting through doors and everything? If your hair is like 2 feet tall, is there like an adjustment that has to be made when you have a mohawk?
I do a lot of ducking, and in my car, I have to put my seat all the way down to the very bottom, so I look like like I'm 70 years old driving around with a mohawk.
So we love on this podcast to hear like first show stories. Like, what was your first show that you played at, and how'd that go as this band?
You know, man, the first show that we ever played at was a great venue, and it's a shame it didn't go any better. It ended up turning out terribly. Our guitarist had some issues with his amp that he was using, and that ended up needing some repairs. So we had to borrow an amp from another band, and he spent he's kind of he likes to be in tune with his tone, I guess, so to speak. So that tone was kind of throwing him off, and in turn that was kind of throwing us off. And still we had a lot of people turning out, but I feel like that was definitely a first show to remember.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of those, we love hearing kind of like those stories where it's just, you always have all the things that can go wrong when you're playing a band, especially. I mean, it's one of those professions or one of those hobbies where it's just anything that can go wrong usually goes wrong around the first show. But I mean, those are definitely learning experiences. And when you guys are performing live, we always talk to people here kind of about like the high and the thrill of like what that can bring you in as performing to the audience, and like finally unleashing your music to them after you've practiced it a million times, getting that good feeling that you get. What is that feeling like for you specifically?
For me specifically, I used to be a really introverted person and not really, talk to people very much. So it's really kind of brought out my communicative side and made it a lot easier for me to talk to people, being up on stage in front of people and having them cheer and stuff like that. I can't lie to you. It's the best feeling, you've ever felt in your entire life, to know that, people are cheering for you and that they like what you're doing, and, all the compliments afterwards. It's awesome. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it's always been described to me by a lot of people as it's a high, like a drug that you can never buy. It's unbelievable. And my only experience with that is that I drunkenly sang karaoke one night, and I got 1/1000th of that what you guys get, because I had 3 girls clapping for me, even though I sung terribly. But it was good enough for me. That was my one foray into live performances. But before you guys go on live, is there a preparation that you guys go through? Do you have sort of like a checklist? Do you guys have are you guys a little superstitious where it comes you have to do like certain things? What is your preparation like for you?
For me personally, I just try to try to calm myself down, because, like the adrenaline is going like crazy right before you're about to get on stage. And then especially if you're playing a little later at night, that's kind of why we always like going first, so we can just, get all that energy out. So that makes it kind of a little tougher when you go on later. But yeah, I mean, out of the 4 of us, our drummer is the one who has the hardest time. Before every show, he always gets really nervous, and he kind of just puts himself at a distance from everybody. And a couple of times he's told us stories that he's thrown up before shows and stuff. So we just kind of let him do his thing, and once he gets up on stage, he's fine. But he's kind of a perfectionist. Surprisingly,
yeah, the drummers, the ones that I've talked to specifically, they're the ones that usually tend to get most of the nerves. But I do think it's because they carry the beat. They kind of they're the backbone of the band. If they screw up, everyone screws up. So I mean, that is a lot of added pressure. But yeah, drummers.
It is.
Like I said before, drummers are a special breed, though. When it comes to musicians, they're definitely a little bit different from the band, but they are one of the most vital, if not the most vital component of it.
Absolutely.
When you guys are done, do you kind of like have a tradition afterwards? You guys like all get together and hang out? How does that work out?
Yeah, we usually after every show, we'll, go out and hang out with people in the crowd and talk to people and meet new people. And usually, a lot of our, close bandmates and friends are there. So our tradition usually is to have a couple of drinks and, kind of go out and mingle with the crowd for a little bit and talk to people and see how they enjoyed the show. And like I said, meet new people and stuff. It's always fun doing
Yeah.
that.
With this band, have you always worn makeup, or is that something that you guys chose to do after a while, or was that always the case?
That's always been the case from the very first show. I've worn the makeup the whole time.
How difficult is it for you, though, playing live, especially with that makeup on? Or I had a band on here before that kind of wore masks when they played, which I don't understand how they could, but they said they liked it because people's eyes wouldn't be on them, so they could feel a little bit more free, like they wouldn't feel like they were being watched as much. But for you, with all the makeup on, does that add, because it probably makes it a little bit more hotter, like when you're on the stage, because the stage is hot enough as it is. How do you deal with it?
To tell you the truth, the makeup that I get is amazing. It dries and kind of like cracks a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually kind of like when I sweat and stuff, obviously, because it is really super hot on pretty much every stage that you go to. It doesn't really, affect my the makeup very much. So I don't know. Maybe it's a good makeup. It's called Horror Flesh, I believe.
Flesh.
And like I said, I use it all the time. I've used it for several costumes in the past, and I love it.
Out of all the venues that you played at with this band, which venue has been your favorite and why?
Probably our favorite has been a place called Burns Alley.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a long time, like when we had first gotten together, we were talking about playing at some of the local punk bars. And they always have a ton of really great bands in there, and a lot of them are great punk bands. And to be able to play at a place where I've seen, numerous shows, and they've all been great. To be able to play at a place like that is incomparable. I mean, we basically built a really good relationship with the owner there, and it's been great.
So, like, one of the things that I said earlier on, if anyone forgot to mention this, these guys are from South Carolina, and I'm from Minnesota, and one of the things that I really came to realize when I was starting out this podcast is that I'm very close to Minneapolis, so the Minneapolis area is a huge metal scene. I had no idea. I always thought everyone thinks about Minneapolis, I think about, like, Prince and Bob Dylan and some of those guys. How would you describe the music scene down in South Carolina?
Down here, I would say it's a little bit more of the... there's a lot of, like Southern rock. Mm-hmm. Quite a few, actually, a surprising number of metal bands here. I
found that all over the country there is like probably more metal bands than any other type of band. For some reason, I don't know how that is, but yeah, I don't get that. I don't get, and especially for a genre that hasn't been mainstream since like Metallica. I don't understand that, but you never guess that. But so other than probably like the country music, did you find it hard? Like you said, you were searching on Craigslist, but did you find it hard maybe getting gigs for the band to start out with, because not too many people have heard of horror punk before?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, I mean, we played that first gig, and that kind of got our name out there a little bit. But when you're first starting out, it's tough to get into really anywhere. And we were fortunate enough to land a couple of good spots, right off the bat, pretty much. And, we've been really fortunate in that regard.
And when it comes to songwriting, who writes the lyrics in the band? Is it you or is someone else?
For our first album, that was all me. Mm-hmm. And we've done, there's a couple of cover songs on that one as well, obviously, that I, didn't write. But all of our original stuff was written by me. Now, our second album is probably going to be a little bit of a mix of our guitarist and myself. Mm-hmm. So I'm enjoying the fact that he's going to be assisting me in the songwriting a little bit. It's going to be...
You're going to have a little bit of a Lennon-McCartney vibe going on?
Yeah, yeah, if you will, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're writing your lyrics, where do you take your inspiration from? Is it more of like day-to-day stuff, like random conversations that you hear, or maybe the news? Or I've always asked this, and one guy said, didn't really give me a definite yes, but it was close to. There's always that trope in movies where the dude is having a dream and then he dreams up the perfect song lyric to like the perfect song, and then he wakes up and he's like, I gotta write this down. This is gonna be the next greatest hit. Has that ever happened to you? And how? And also, how do you come up with your lyrics?
So funny story about that. Most of our lyrics are about horror movies. So I just kind of come up with stuff that, is my own personal synopsis of what the movie was like to me. Sometimes it's the protagonist side, and sometimes it's the antagonist side. So, and the place that I actually come up with the most lyrics and songs is actually in the shower. For whatever reason, when I'm taking a shower, it just flows out like crazy. I have no idea why.
Do you it might be the acoustics, because that's probably one of the best areas to get the acoustics in. So who knows? And when you're coming up with your songs, are you one of the types of people that has the title already thought up of, or do you look at the lyrics afterwards and then choose a title from the lyrics?
I'm definitely a choose your title after the lyrics type of person, because I tend to look more at the total song and how it sounds, and how I basically what kind of my synopsis, I guess, of the song.
Yeah. So if there were to be like a band defining song of yours, what has been your most popular song that you guys have come up with?
Probably our most popular at this point would be It Creeps. Because of the whole It movies coming out here recently. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. But I'm a huge fan of the first It movie. I'm a huge fan of the second It movie, but I'm always going to be a fan of Tim Curry.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I was going to say that when I heard that they were going to come out with the new movie, I was like, no, just leave it be. Tim Curry's a perfect Pennywise. But with technology nowadays, I figured they might as well give it a try. And I was very surprised at how good it was. But still, I mean,
I was too.
It's one of those things, too, where you're just like, to be honest, we're going to go on a quick tangent here for all these people that just want to hear the music. But I am very anxious as to see how they're going to have a thing like that play, because the new movie's supposed to be set in like modern times now. Everyone's going to have their cell phone, so let's take a picture of the clown and be like, oh, hey, there's a clown terrorizing people, and you can't really capture anyone because they'll just call people on their cell phone to come and get them.
Yeah.
They're going to have to be really, really smart about that. So that's my personal worry.
My personal hope is that it's not going to be stupid. I really hope.
Well, if you look at the cast, they have cast some good. Like they had like Bill Hader as like one of the guys, and they had Jessica Chastain. So they have some actors that at least look like the kids.
True.
So we'll see how that goes. And before we end this year, the new Halloween I think looks really, really good. So I'm looking very, very much forward to seeing that.
That was actually the biggest majority of it was filmed right here in Charleston, so I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the monuments from around town.
Did you ever see them when they were filming?
I actually signed up to be an extra in the movie maybe like a few months ahead of time, and never got a casting call for it. But no, you pretty much couldn't get anywhere near it anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you could have been like one of the murder victims, that would have been like the coolest thing ever.
I would have totally been a murder victim.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So going back to the music part now, when you're recording, do you bring the lyrics usually to the band and then they come up with the melody, or do you have the melody like already in your head when you're writing down the lyrics of what it's going to sound like?
Usually when I come up with music, I'm fortunate enough to kind of come up with everything all at once. So I'll basically think of like a really cool chorus part, and then just kind of build on the music from there, and then come up with the rest of the song from there.
How important is rhyming to you when you're coming up with the music? Does that play a huge part, or are you more kind of one of those where if it just sounds good with the melody, then it doesn't really matter?
I'm definitely more of a rhyming person. Like I said, I grew up writing a bunch of poetry and stuff when I was younger, so I've always enjoyed that. Plus, I guess maybe I'm a little bit OCD with stuff like that. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so now we're going to the part of our podcast that's the most famous part. It's the Ask Actors Studio kind of questions that we ask. I ask 5 questions. I have all the answers tallied up here for our music selection. We have another playlist that we use where we have sometimes we have some health and fitness people on here, and they have a separate 5 questions. But I tally up, and then once we reach podcast 50, as it was agreed on, I give the answers to the audience, and we'll see who the winners are. So for the first question, out of all the music that's ever been written in the history of music, what is one song that you personally wish that you would come up with yourself, and why?
Probably Hybrid Moments by the Misfits, because that's, again, one of those songs that was a staple when I was growing up. I still love it even to this day. I really wish I would have come up with that one.
Now, I probably already know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Now, any artist or band, dead or alive, that you could play one show with, who would it be and why?
That would probably be Motorhead.
Oh, wow.
Because I love Lemmy Kilmister's sound on the bass, and I've been trying to duplicate that ever since I started playing the bass. Mm-hmm. And until I get... maybe a better bass or something like that. It's just not going to be there, but I'm going to spend most of my time trying, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. I thought you were going to either say Doors or Misfits, but yeah, Motorhead. I'm not going to lie. When I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to go work out, and Ace of Spades is going to be one of the songs that I always listen to when I do that. So that's just a coincidence. So I got to write Motorhead down here, and then. Okay, I'm going to ask you the question first, and then there's the thing that I have to say afterwards before you answer, just to make sure we don't screw this up. So, out of all the venues on the planet, if you could play at one venue, where would it be and why? And you cannot say Red Rocks, because that has been chosen 8 times. That's already going to win, basically hands down, because there's only been one other venue that's had more than 1 vote. So I'm canceling Red Rocks off the issue. So other than Red Rocks,
man, that's a tough one. Let's see. To be honest with you, I would personally enjoy being able to play at the Disney Fright Night celebration that they do every year. I think that would be really cool to play. I really can't stand Disney, but I do enjoy the fact that they have that really cool. I forget what it's called, Orlando Fright Nights or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but I can't come up with it. Yeah, that would be awesome. Before I go on to my other questions, how do you interpret, or how do you put like your costumes and everything? Or is there like a show that you like to put on within a show? Like, do you like to do like blood splattering, or like The Kiss where you spit blood in the audience? Do you guys do that type of stuff?
We really don't spit too much blood. We've definitely like to get out and mingle with the crowd, though, that's for sure. A lot of times our guitarist is a little bit more mobile than I am, so he's usually the one that likes to get out there and jump around and get people interested in stuff. But no real blood splattering. We've got a few props that we set up with us every time we go on stage. Lots of fog, that's for sure.
When you guys are looking for people to like go out to and like mingle with in the crowd, is there always a specific type of person that you're looking for, or you guys just kind of wing it?
Anybody that's there, man. We'll just kind of wing it.
Do you have any plans to maybe do like an Alice Cooper or Ozzy Osbourne where you guys like decapitate yourself like on crowd? Or is that if you guys start making the big bucks?
Yeah, we're actually talking about maybe adding some old time black and white movie clips doing some really cool. I would love to be decapitated, or my dream is to be shocked back to life. So maybe we can make that happen someday.
I was gonna say, if anything, during October, you guys would probably be one of the most popular bands in the country. So, you guys should have a gig almost every day in October, basically. So
that's for sure, man.
All these haunted hay rides, all these theme parks that have these scary nights. Definitely, you guys would definitely. Have you guys done that before? Like participated in Halloween events in costume and everything?
Absolutely, yeah, every year.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's got to be the one thing. Do you ever have like I know you like to do like horror stuff, but do you ever have like the season of Halloween like in your lyrics? Is that at all in there, or is it more just the horror movies?
Actually, one of the songs that I came up with is called "Every Day Is Halloween," and that's pretty much how I live my life, is watching horror movies and thinking about Halloween stuff. So,
Yep. So, okay, going back to our question. So, for the fourth question, this is our most popular question. Guilty pleasure song. What is a guilty pleasure song that people who would meet you for the first time, or even people that you know dearly, would never guess that you enjoy?
oh man, that's a tough one. Uh, phew. Oh man, that's a really tough one. I'm trying to come up with a really good one.
Yeah.
Let's see. For me, it would have to be. Oh man. It would probably have to be anything by Whitney Houston,
Ooh.
to be honest.
That's close. I mean, that is a close. That's in our top 5 for best answers. We've had the number one obviously is a death metal dude who I never thought listened to anything other than death metal. You could just tell by looking at him. He said "I Want It That Way" was his guilty pleasure song. So that one wins, and then we got Bop coming in close second. That was another one where I was just like, oh, come on. But yeah, Whitney Houston. Yeah, what's your favorite Whitney Houston song?
You know, it's tough for me to pick a favorite, man. That lady has got a hell of a voice.
"How Will I Know" is probably my favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
And just the energy that's associated with it too, and plus my dad really loved Whitney Houston growing up. So
She's definitely one of those where her voice is just nothing compares to it. It's top 5 voices all time, hands down. I mean, it's one of those things where you just have to say life isn't fair and human beings aren't made fair when you hear her sing. So, lastly, guilty pleasure genre.
let's see, probably country.
Country.
Although
you are from the South,
be,
though, so I mean, yeah.
it's got to be old country for me.
Oh yeah,
though.
like Johnny Cash.
I can't stand pretty much any music after the year 2000.
Oh yep. Yep.
It's got to be really good.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things that I also like to ask the guests, and I ask probably about half the time because I don't want to ask it every episode, making it boring. But obviously, rock and roll and punk is kind of a subgenre of rock and roll. Rock and roll music in the mainstream has declined a lot. I'd say probably since like the mid '90s, maybe early 2000s, where it's not non-existent now, but it's suffered a lot. What do you think is the main reason behind this, and also what do you think it can do to kind of regain a lot of following and kind of make it back to the mainstream?
You know, man, my hope is that we can kind of bring something like that back to, people, because I've noticed that same thing. It just it seems a lot more cut and paste, and it's tough to, like on the flip side of that, it's tough to come up with a new idea if somebody's already done it before a million times.
Yeah.
So there's that. I feel like a lot of people are getting more into the money aspect of playing music, and it doesn't need to be about that, man. It needs to be about getting out there, have a good time, and showing people that you're having a good time, and the money will follow after that.
Absolutely. I just think, the rise of hip hop too played a big part in it, and I just think it's gonna even out a little bit, and then we can kind of get back to a more of a balanced type of music that's popular. So, what are your guys' plans in the future? Do you guys have any gigs coming up that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, we've actually got a gig coming up August 18th. It's a SPCA benefit for one of the local animal shelters here in Summerville, South Carolina. It's going to be a huge show. There's a good 70 bands. It's on August 18th and 19th. Good 70 bands. I want to say there's about 12 different venues across Charleston. We're actually going to be playing at the Purple Buffalo with 4 of our really good friends from other bands. So we're really looking forward to that one, man. It's going to be a fun show.
You heard that, folks. August 18th, if you're in that area for the ASPCA, these guys will be at the Purple Buffalo. What are other than you guys, are there any more type of bands in your genre in the area? And if so, who are they?
There's a couple. There used to be, I'm not really sure if they're still doing anything or not, but there's a horror punk band in the area called Glass Lashes. Like I said, I'm not really sure if they're still doing anything or not. Also, we just played with a band in Columbia, South Carolina, not too long ago. It's kind of a horror metal band called Buried Voices. They're really great guys, great band.
Yeah. So, what do you see for your guys' self as like your guys' goals for the next 12 months? Do you guys have like a certain mindset of where you guys want to be then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're like I said, we're planning on going back to the studio here in a couple months, and after that, we're gonna try to start looking to get together a tour, at least across the eastern part of the United States.
Yeah. So where can people find your guys' music from your first album? Is it on iTunes, Spotify? I know you guys have a Facebook page, which I'll leave in a link down below. But where can they find you?
You can find us anywhere. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, YouTube, all the social media sites, Reverb Nation, Bandcamp, pretty much everywhere. Deezer.
Yeah.
I think there's a few. I'm forgetting that we're not mentioning it right now, but yeah, we're pretty much everywhere.
Don't worry, we'll leave a link for everything down below for everyone to find out. And lastly, I like to ask these final two questions as we reach the end here. If someone were to come up to you right now and say, "Hey, I'm really thinking about joining a band," what would be the best piece of advice that you would give them in order to make their band successful?
Just be humble people, man, because if you're a humble person and you treat people the way they should be treated, you're going to go a long way. And I can tell you that from personal experience.
Yeah. And lastly, if you were to talk to yourself maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself musically?
Probably to practice a little bit more. I had a little bit of trouble initially, kind of getting used to playing the bass and singing at the same time.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a struggle, but I made it past it, and definitely would be to practice a little bit more. So I could,
that is the second time we've heard practice more. So everyone out there listening, if you're in a band, make sure to practice your ass off when you're young, because your older self will appreciate it. Now, I mean, it's been great having you on, Mr. Von Frankenfurter. You guys need anything? You guys need a plug for your upcoming tour when you guys are going on it? I will definitely give you guys a shout out. You guys want me to announce when your next album comes out? I'm more than happy to. We'd be more than glad to have you on again, or maybe the whole band on. We could maybe work something out like that. But it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you guys nothing but the best. I've listened to a few of your songs, and you guys definitely have something. You guys definitely have something cooking. So I definitely see a good future ahead of you guys. And is there any last things that you'd like to say to our audience?
We definitely appreciate the chance to come on the show, man. For sure, definitely. It's been great talking to you.
We love having our guests on. So everyone, again, the Monsters from Outer Space, highly recommend them. I'll be leaving a link to all their stuff down below. And this is DD on the Spot, Ryan Johnson signing out. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks again.